First story. I abuse my son, favoring my daughter. Now he kept lights on past his bedtime. So I took away his dessert privilege and sleep medication as punishment. And my entitled son made a fool of himself in front of police by running away from home, so I grounded him. Now everyone has abandoned me, and I regret my actions but mostly hate my wife for not stopping me. So for context, I 45M have 2 kids. My son 15M and my daughter 14F. My wife 43F, and I try to keep our house as low stress as possible. I've always said I don't believe in harsh punishments unless they're absolutely necessary, and I do explain rules when I set them. I make sure I have actual proof before I accuse them of something. That's always been my approach. That being said, we've been having more issues lately, and it's mainly with my son. He's not a bad kid. He's funny and really smart in certain areas like gaming and anything to do with coding. But he's also got a defiant streak. He's the kind of kid who'll argue with you even if he's wrong, and he doesn't let things go. There's always been a little bit of an edge to how he talks to us, not rude, but you can feel the tension. It wasn't always like that, though. A few years ago, he got diagnosed with insomnia, and it's been a journey. He has trouble falling asleep and staying asleep, and he's on medication for it. The meds need to be taken at a specific time every night, and he's supposed to be asleep by around 10 o'clock to give him the best shot at resting. His mood and health are noticeably worse when he's not getting decent sleep. My daughter, on the other hand, is what every parent dreams of in terms of easy. She's independent, helps around the house without being asked, does well in school, gets along with her teachers, and rarely gives us any trouble. She doesn't argue when she's told to do something. She's always been that way, calm and quiet. If anything, she gets overlooked because she just handles her own stuff. Now, here's where the issue starts. We have a few rules in the house that technically apply to both kids' bedtime at 10. 3 cups of milk per day because of a past calcium deficiency, and no screens after 9:30. But to be real with you all, a lot of those rules were designed around managing my son. He was the one who had the calcium issue. He's also the one who, if left alone, will be up at 3 a.m. on his phone, tired the next day, moody as hell, and uncooperative. So we came up with guidelines to help him function better. With my daughter, we never really enforced those things the same way. Not deliberately, more like, we never had to. She just never gave us any reason to. She drinks milk when she wants, and makes her own meals, and somehow still hits every growth marker at her checkups. She doesn't sneak her phone past the cutoff time, or stay up too late as far as I could tell. She was just quieter about everything. Less confrontational. Over time, though, it's become more obvious that I've been harder on my son than her. He's noticed it. He's angry about it. And that's where the blow-up happened. Last week, I walked past his room well after 11 and saw his light was still on. This wasn't a one-time thing. I'd caught it a few times recently, and his mood had been noticeably worse for a while, snapping at his mum, ignoring chores, picking fights over little things. I put 2 and 2 together. The sleep was messing with him again. So I told him that as a consequence, he'd lose dessert and gaming privileges for 3 days. Honestly, I also suspected the sugar wasn't helping him get to sleep either. The second I said that, he went off. He said it was bullshit, his word, that he was getting punished when his sister does the same thing all the time. He claimed I never check on her, and that she stays up later than he does, just without the lights on. I tried to argue that I didn't know she was breaking the rules. He said I was just choosing to ignore it because she's the favorite. That stung. Not because it wasn't partly true, but because he's been saying this more and more lately, that I don't treat them equally, that I give her more leeway, that I'm harder on him just because he struggles more. I told him she doesn't get punished because I've never caught her breaking the rules. Which is technically true. She's quiet. She reads books on her phone. She doesn't leave her light on. She gets up late, which makes me think she is sleeping enough. He came back with, so she can break the rules as long as she's sneaky about it. And I honestly didn't have a great answer to that. I tried to tell him that most of the rules were made for his benefit, because he needed more structure and support. He said that wasn't his fault, and now it just feels like he's always the one getting punished. There was another example, the milk rule. My son was calcium deficient at one point, so we put in a rule that he had to drink 3 glasses of milk per day with meals. We applied it to both kids just to make it a household thing. But my daughter does her own thing, sometimes makes breakfast before we're even up, and I've never followed up with her on whether she drinks the milk or not. When I asked her, she said she usually does, but I've never checked. My son, on the other hand, gets reminded constantly, and if he skips a glass, we notice. He brought that up too. She never drinks milk 3 times a day. You don't even care. But if I skip once, you get on me. Again, not wrong. But I told him it was because the milk thing was his health issue to begin with. She didn't need the rule. Really, she was already healthy. He said that doesn't matter if I'm going to act like the rule applies to both. At that point, he just stopped arguing and went to his room. Later, my wife said I could have handled it better. But she also said our son needs to calm down. She said he has a habit of blowing things out of proportion and turning every disagreement into an unfairness lecture. She tends to back me up more often than not, which I appreciate. But I know she also doesn't want to deal with the drama. Our daughter just doesn't argue if she gets told to do something, she does it. That's part of why things have been so different between the two of them. But I've been thinking about what my son said a lot more lately. The favoritism accusations. The idea that I'm treating them differently, even if I think it's for the right reasons. I've always said I treat them equally. They get the same devices, the same amount of one-on-one time with me, and the same rules on paper. But in practice, it's clearly not equal. I do monitor my son more. I do expect him to follow the rules more strictly, because I feel like he needs them more. And when he pushes back, I enforce them harder. The thing is, I've stopped even pretending to be fair. I let things slide with my daughter because it's easier. She doesn't argue, doesn't throw a fit. And when she does break the rules, she does it in a way that doesn't create noise. I don't have to deal with it. I punish my son because I catch him, and because he pushes back. I know it. He knows it. And now it's become this wall between us. He's pulled away a lot over the past year. Less talking, more time in his room. I figured it was just normal teenage stuff. But now I'm starting to think it's a buildup of resentment. I've been so focused on keeping the peace that I let things get lopsided. He notices the hypocrisy. My daughter gets praised for being mature. But maybe she's just quieter about bending the rules. She doesn't get monitored because I assume she's fine. He gets watched like a hawk because I assume he's not. A while back, there was another moment I brushed off, but it's sticking with me now. We were all in the car, and my daughter mentioned that she stays up reading until at least midnight most nights. She said it casually, like it was no big deal. I even joked, "Well, you still manage to look alive in the morning." My son didn't say anything at the time, but later he brought it up and asked why she could brag about breaking bedtime, and I just laughed. I told him I didn't think she was serious. That was a lie. I just didn't want to deal with another fight. He also mentioned that she's allowed to lock her door, but he isn't. He said that when he tried locking it once, I told him he didn't need privacy if he couldn't follow basic rules. He's right again. That happened. She locks her door whenever she wants, and I've never questioned it. I think I assumed she deserved privacy because she didn't abuse it. But that line of thinking is flawed. I never even gave him the chance. Another fight happened 2 months ago, when I forgot to buy the protein powder my son uses for his weight gain plan. He's been trying to build muscle to help with his metabolism and sleep issues. I completely forgot. My daughter had asked for a very specific brand of face wash that same week, and I made a separate trip to get it. He noticed, said something like, "Funny how you remember her face soap, but not my health stuff." I laughed it off at the time, but now I realize these aren't small things to him. They add up. He's not wrong about the double standard. Even if it started with good intentions tailoring the rules to his needs, trusting her independence, it doesn't feel like that to him. It feels like favoritism. It feels like punishment for having more visible issues. And the worst part is, I've been so set on seeing myself as reasonable that I ignored how deeply unfair this all looks from his side. My wife doesn't help much either. She agrees with me on most things, not because she thinks we're right, but because she wants less conflict. If he argues, she tells him to drop it or says, "Don't start." If our daughter says the same thing, she's told she's expressing herself well. Our son noticed that too. He called her out once and said, "You only care what she says when it's quiet." That stuck with me. The light incident pushed things past the usual tension. Since then, my son's been quieter, but in a colder way. Not sulking. Just done. He eats alone. I asked if he wanted to help me clean the garage last weekend like we used to. He said he was busy, but I know he just didn't want to be around me. I asked him directly last night if he felt like I was harder on him. He said, "I don't think you even see me. You see a problem and a rule, and you just go straight into punish mode." I tried to explain my reasoning again, but I was just trying to help him stay on track, keep his sleep right, and protect his health. He just looked at me and said, "But when she breaks the rules, you make excuses. When I do, I get rules added." I really sat with that one. He's not wrong. She breaks bedtime. I say she probably needs time to wind down. He breaks bedtime. I say he's throwing off his meds and losing dessert. She skips milk. I say it's fine because she eats well. He skips milk. I say he's jeopardizing his bones. Same rules, different outcomes. I kept thinking I was being logical. But it wasn't logic, it was convenience. He's louder when he's upset. She's quiet. So I punish the one who makes noise. I give the benefit of the doubt to the one who doesn't argue. I call it fairness because the rules are technically the same. But it's not fair. And now he's drifting. I feel like I'm losing him. I don't want to be the parent who only realizes too late that their kid felt neglected. But at the same time, I don't want to start micromanaging my daughter just to make it even. That's not the answer either. I don't think I favor her in material ways. They both get phones, the same amount of screen time, and the same curfews. I spend time with both when they ask. But the emotional treatment, the way I respond to their mistakes, is clearly not equal. Now I'm wondering if I need to confront my daughter more and enforce rules more strictly with her, just to show my son I'm paying attention. Or is that overcorrecting? Would I just be punishing her for being quieter about things? Is it really that I favor her? Or am I just more exhausted by him? I don't know anymore. Ada? Comments. Comment 1. YTA. You're a lazy parent. You set rules, and then only enforce them when it's convenient, or when one kid is loud enough to remind you they exist. You admitted straight up that your daughter breaks the rules, you just don't bother because she does it quietly. Meanwhile, your son, who is struggling and literally medicated for sleep issues, gets hammered for every mistake. You're not treating them equally. You're punishing symptoms and ignoring causes. One kid needs more compassion, not discipline. And you're calling it logical parenting. No man, it's parenting by autopilot. You're coasting with the easy kid and dumping all your expectations on the one who's struggling. Fix it. Start parenting the whole household, not just the one that makes noise. Your son sees right through you, and it sounds like he's halfway out the emotional door already. Comment 2. I don't even know where to start here. This was really hard to read because honestly, you sound like the kind of parent that drives a wedge between siblings without meaning to. And I'm saying this as someone who was the problem kid. You've created a system where being quiet and obedient gets rewarded with freedom, and being honest and open about struggles gets punished. I get it, your son's tough. He pushes back. He probably makes parenting exhausting. But he's also the one telling you the truth. He tells you when he's hurt. Your daughter, she's just figured out how to stay invisible. That's not maturity. That's survival. You need to stop treating parenting like a point system. Start actually seeing both of your kids. Your son's not asking for special treatment. He's asking for the same benefit of the doubt you give her. And you're not giving it to him. Comment 3. So let me get this straight. You make a bunch of rules for one kid. You enforce those rules only on him. You assume the other kid follows them because she's quiet. You call that equal treatment? Bruh, that's not equality. Your daughter is playing the game better. She knows the rules don't matter if she stays under the radar. And instead of asking yourself why your son keeps pushing back, you just tighten the leash. One kid learned to be invisible, and the other one's getting punished for being seen. Don't be surprised when he checks out for good someday. YTA. And your logic's as busted as your bedtime policy. Update. I read the comments on my original post, and I'll be honest, I got defensive immediately. I told myself Reddit didn't know my house, my kids, or what I deal with. I told myself people online exaggerate, and that they're biased towards kids and hate all parents. I convinced myself my son was manipulating the narrative by acting like the victim, and I doubled down on the whole rules are rules stance. That mindset kicked off the worst 2 weeks my family has had. I started watching my son more intensely. I told myself I was being more fair, but in reality, I was looking for confirmation that he was the problem, and I wasn't. That he was ungrateful, overreacting, making things harder than they needed to be. The more I tried to be present, the more I micromanaged him. The final straw was catching him up past bedtime again. Lights off this time, but clearly not asleep. I heard movement, maybe talking to himself. I thought about the Reddit comments saying I was unfair. And for some reason, instead of reevaluating, I got more rigid. I felt like everyone online was telling me I was losing control of my own house, and I reacted to that. So I removed his bedroom door. I told him I was rebuilding trust from scratch. I told myself it was about safety, accountability. But if I'm being brutally honest, it was a power move. I wanted him to see I was still the one in charge. He didn't argue. He just asked, "Where am I supposed to change?" And I told him to use the bathroom. My wife saw me doing it. She looked like she wanted to intervene, but she didn't. That silence felt like validation in the moment. I told myself she agreed with me. I told myself I was doing what a strong parent would do. Later that night, I overheard my daughter and son talking. Her voice was low. His was cracked, frantic. He said he felt like he couldn't shut his brain off, like he was jittering inside his skin. He was on the floor of his room, pacing in small circles like an animal. I stood outside the door listening, and still I told myself it was performative. When I confronted him about being up again, he admitted he'd stopped taking his medication. I asked why, and he said, "It doesn't matter if I sleep, I still get punished." I told him that if he couldn't handle a simple bedtime without pills, maybe he wasn't ready for the responsibility of managing medication. It wasn't logic. It was pride. I didn't plan to say that. It just came out part instinct, part defense mechanism. I'd felt powerless for weeks, and the only way I knew to reassert control was to withhold something. I made it a natural consequence in my head, even though it wasn't natural at all. It was punishment wrapped in bullshit. My wife asked if that was safe. I said, "It's not forever. Just until he shows he can follow basic structure." I said that like it was a boundary. In reality, I was just angry he made me feel like a failure. Angry that Reddit agreed with him. Angry that he wouldn't let me parent the way I thought I was supposed to. That night, he didn't sleep at all. My daughter woke us up around 2:30 am. Said something was wrong. He was in his room curled on the floor, whispering nonsense. He said he felt like his thoughts were bouncing around without landing. I knelt beside him and told him to breathe. He didn't even hear me. He asked me for the medication back, and for a second, I considered it. But then I thought, if I give in now, he'll know he can manipulate me every time. I told him, "Let's get you back on track first." I heard myself say it and wanted to take it back immediately. But I didn't. The next day, my daughter started hiding the pills in her backpack. I didn't know at first, but I noticed she stayed close to him after dinner. She sat with him until he fell asleep. She kept her lamp dim and door cracked open. One night I found them asleep in her room, him on the floor, wrapped in a blanket she'd brought, and her sitting against the door, like she was guarding him from me. I confronted her the next morning. She said she'd given him the meds because he was breaking down, and she couldn't watch it anymore. I told her she'd gone behind my back. She said, "You weren't listening when we told you to your face." I said she was enabling him. She snapped. First time I've seen her actually snap at me. She said, "You treat me like a grown-up when I'm useful, and like a child when I push back. You treat him like a broken robot you're trying to reprogram." She stormed off and slammed her door. I stood in the hallway and felt like the walls were closing in. Not because I was the victim, because I was the only one left who still thought I had control. The night after that, he left. 3 am, barefoot, hoodie, backpack. He left the back door open. We didn't even notice until my daughter checked the bathroom and saw it was empty. He didn't take a phone. We called everyone. His friends, his school group chat, my mother. Nothing. We drove around for 2 hours before calling the police. He was found sitting behind a strip mall at 7:30 am. Head down, rocking. He told the officer he left because he felt like he was unraveling and didn't feel safe at home. That phrase, "didn't feel safe," is now permanently part of the CPS record attached to my name. I still struggle to believe he wandered the streets like that. Some part of me still wonders if it was a stunt. But even if it was, what does that say about me? That he thought a stunt was the only way to be heard. The police weren't subtle about their opinion. One of them said, "He's lucky it wasn't colder last night. We brought him home, but not really." That afternoon, CPS called. They said they'd reviewed the medication issue and door removal. Because he wasn't physically harmed, and my daughter intervened, they weren't pursuing charges. But we were under formal monitoring for 90 days. The investigator said, "You have 2 very smart, very isolated kids. Start listening before this ends differently next time." My wife was quiet that whole day. Later, she said, "We can't keep pretending this is something we'll grow out of. You need to look at what you're doing, not just what you think you're trying to do." Now my kids are in therapy. Separately. My wife takes them. I asked to join, and my son said no. My daughter didn't answer. She just looked tired. I wanted this update to show progress. But it doesn't. I don't even know if they want to fix things anymore. I just know I keep losing ground. Comments. Comment 1. The saddest part is that this entire disaster was avoidable. Your original post already hinted that you knew something was off, but instead of sitting with that discomfort, you tried to fix your son by tightening the screws. What you really did was strip away his dignity. And your daughter. You turned her into your co-parent, and then exploded on her when she acted like one. Of course she snapped. She's been silently carrying the emotional weight you should have been managing. Your wife needs to step up too. It's not just your failure, it's a household dynamic that enabled years of imbalance. You're the lightning rod, sure, but she was the grounding wire. And now you're both realizing that the storm is internal. Therapy is a start. But this isn't going to be fixed with apologies or a couple of sessions. You broke trust, and not just once. Comment 2. You removed his effing door and withheld prescribed medication. Dude, what the actual hell were you thinking? You literally stole your kid's sleep meds and then got shocked when the boy ran away. Like, yeah, of course he did. He was sleep deprived, gaslit, and being monitored like a prison inmate. And don't even get me started on trust needs to be earned. He's a minor with a medical condition. That's not a trust issue. That's a carer responsibility. You almost had CPS take your kids because you couldn't handle a 15-year-old having insomnia and feelings. I'm glad they're finally seeing you for what you are. Comment 3. Your daughter sat at a door to guard her brother while he slept. I can't stop thinking about that. That's the image that'll stay with you for the rest of your life, and it should. That's the moment your kids made their own family right in front of you, and didn't include you in it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was the end. That's when they stopped waiting for you to figure it out. You keep talking about pride, control, structure. But what they needed was tenderness, not regulation. And now you're on the outside of a life you used to shape. You'll keep giving money, offering therapy, maybe even showing up at big events, but you won't be in the life unless you start showing them a version of you that doesn't need to be right. That part of you. The one who still thinks this might be a phase? That's the part they're protecting themselves from. Update. I wish this update had anything hopeful in it, but it doesn't. Everything kept sliding downhill until there wasn't a family left to save. I'll try to be honest without pretending I understood what was happening while it was happening. After CPS got involved and therapy started, things didn't magically get better. My son refused to look at me most days. My daughter talked when necessary, but in this flat, drained tone. My wife stood by me publicly, defended me to CPS, and reassured the therapist I wasn't a danger. But after sessions, she barely spoke. She stayed physically present, but emotionally checked out. And I didn't realize how much that silence would come back to bite both of us. Family therapy fell apart first. The therapist said the kids needed space to heal before trying joint sessions again. She suggested parallel work them with one clinician, me and my wife with another. The kids agreed. I didn't. I told the therapist it felt like everyone was teaming up against me. My son gave this little laugh, not amused, more like he'd heard that line his whole life. The session ended early. 2 weeks later, they stopped coming altogether. Their therapist said both wanted to press pause. I knew that wasn't a pause. That was them giving up. The real break happened after I tried to fix things with a gesture. I booked a weekend trip to the mountains cabins, no distractions, bonding time. I pitched it like a healing attempt. My wife said it was too soon. I insisted we needed to interrupt the cycle. My daughter asked if she could stay home or at a friend's. My son didn't even raise his head from his backpack. The trip became a symbol of everything wrong, me deciding what they needed instead of listening. 2 days later, they were gone. They went to live with one of my wife's lifelong friends, a woman they've known since they were toddlers. When my wife got the call telling her the kids were there and staying for now, she cried but didn't tell them to come home. I still don't know if that hurt more than the actual leaving. The legal situation wrapped up quietly. CPS didn't file charges. They closed the case after confirming the medication issue was corrected and the kids were in a safe place. They made it clear the only reason it didn't escalate was because my son wasn't physically harmed and my daughter had stepped in. Being told my 14-year-old saved the situation more effectively than I did was another punch I pretended not to feel. The kids refused to come back home. My wife didn't fight it. She said forcing them back would do more harm. I agreed out loud. Inside, I started resenting her in ways I didn't expect, for not stopping me earlier, for not calling out my decisions, for standing next to me silently while I tore the house down. It's not fair to blame her, and I know that, but resentment doesn't care about fairness. A month into their stay with the family friend, I found out my daughter got a part-time job at a bakery near their high school. She uses her pay to cover the rent the friend didn't even ask for, and she covers her brother too. She immediately stepped into a parental role I claimed I had handled for years. Seeing that broke something I haven't been able to put back together. She works after school, sometimes opens the shop on weekends, and still manages her classes. I keep telling myself she's overextending, that she's ruining her potential by carrying responsibilities that aren't hers. My wife says she's fine, that she's proving she's capable. I can't accept that. In my head, this is my fault, but I twist it into believing she shouldn't have to be responsible, because it makes me feel less needed. Financially, I'm contributing monthly to the family friend. She resisted it and said she didn't want to take money for keeping the kids safe, but I insisted. Not out of generosity, out of guilt and fear. I don't want to lose my daughter completely. Money's the only thing they'll take from me right now. My son barely interacts with me. He responds to texts with one-word answers only when absolutely necessary. He hasn't blocked me, which I treat as a win, even though it's pathetic. He's sleeping better now, taking his medication on schedule. The friend updates my wife, not me. She says he still flinches when someone walks past his room too quickly. That was a detail I didn't need but deserved to hear. I still can't shake the thought that he exaggerated the night he wandered the streets. I know how that sounds. I know it's wrong. But some stubborn part of me refuses to let go of the idea that he dramatized it to make a point. I cling to that thought because the alternative is believing I pushed him far enough to risk his own safety. My wife says I'm in denial. She's probably right. Sometimes I catch myself thinking I was a hands-on parent, that I was involved, present, and structured. Then I remember the look my daughter gave me when I accused her of enabling him. She looked at me like I was a stranger. I guess I was. My wife sleeps facing the wall most nights. She still says she won't leave me. I don't know if that's loyalty or exhaustion. I resent her for not stopping me, and I resent myself for expecting her to. I keep telling myself I didn't lose everything, that the kids might come back someday. But deep down, I know the version of family we had is gone. They're building something new without me. I created rules to keep order. All I managed to do was teach my kids that life is better without me in the room. Comments. Comment 1. I've been following this since your first post, and all I can say is, your kids didn't leave you. They escaped. That's what this looks like. Escape. You want to believe this was a fallout from miscommunication, or poor timing, or a failed mountain trip. But you broke your son slowly over time, and your daughter just got tired of watching it happen. And the part where you say she's ruining her potential by taking care of him. No. She's finally being seen, maybe for the first time, as someone capable, not just convenient. She's surviving the mess you built with your hands and your rules. And your wife? I've been that woman. I kept quiet in a broken house because I thought silence was better than conflict. But let me tell you, silence is conflict. She may still be there, but she's grieving the same family you lost. She just doesn't say it out loud yet. Comment 2. Your kids are doing exactly what kids of emotionally rigid parents do. They build a whole new version of family that doesn't include the one who controlled everything. Your daughter's not ruining her potential. She's finally using it for something that matters. Protecting her brother. Giving him what you wouldn't. And guess what? That's going to be her origin story, not her downfall. As for your son, he's probably going to need therapy for years. You're the reason he can't sleep in peace, even when medicated. That's a hard truth, but it's yours. Own it. Because whether you like it or not, the damage is done. The only question now is if they ever let you back in. And let's be honest, they might not. Comment 3. You're not the devil, but you are the reason everything fell apart. I've been where you are. It starts with structure, then slips into control, then just becomes fear. They'll grow up without needing you. I said all the same things you did. That I was hands-on, that my son was manipulative, that my daughter was mature beyond her years. In reality, I was just blind to how much I was suffocating them, and how quiet pain doesn't mean less pain. You're lucky your wife's still beside you. Don't turn on her too. Because once she's gone, you won't have anyone left to blame but yourself. Let the kids go for now. Let them rebuild. If they circle back to you someday, don't meet them with an apology, meet them with changed behavior. That's the only shot you have. Second story. I broke into a burning house to save my girlfriend's building, and my girlfriend broke up with me, saying I hurt her feelings, canceled my tickets for our planned vacation, and went with her ex-fiancé. This weekend, I was staying over at my girlfriend's apartment. It is a single house split into 2 apartments. Around 8 am I smelled bacon, and went downstairs to see if she was cooking some. She had just bought a 1/4 pig from a local farmer, so I was really hoping this was some of the bacon. Sadly, it wasn't, and must have been the adjoining apartment next door. At about 11 o'clock, we hear an alarm going off next door, and don't think much of it. The neighbor 20s is always around odd hours and staying up late, so my girlfriend and I just thought it was just him sleeping through his alarm clock. Shortly after this, I got up to do some laundry and smelled smoke. I realized the alarm is not an alarm clock, but the smoke detector going off for the last 5-10 minutes. I immediately ran around the house to the side door leading to the other apartment to see if I could get in. Through the window I could see smoke, and also someone in the other room passed out on the couch. I tried banging on the door to wake the neighbor, but he didn't budge. I am a locksmith and had my picks on me, so I tried picking the door, but could not get it quickly. So I ran to the front door, and thankfully it was unlocked. I walked inside, ignored the neighbor on the couch, and followed the smoke. Turns out the bacon I had smelled at 8 am, along with a giant omelet, was still on the stove 3 hours later, burning. I turned off both burners, took care of the burnt food, and then went to check on the neighbor. The neighbor was out. It was clear this was either alcohol or drug related, but he was otherwise okay. I let him be and went back to my girlfriend's apartment. The neighbor woke up 15 minutes later, and we could hear him moving around just fine. He never came over to say thank you. The part where this gets messy is that since I am a locksmith, I know what I just did could be considered breaking and entering/trespassing. I am pretty sure this would be covered by Good Samaritan laws, but I wanted to avoid having it become a problem. It would be very hard to keep my job as a locksmith if I had either of those charges on my record. Later that day, I left my girlfriend's and filed a police report to cover my arse, just in case. Last night, I was at the brewery with my girlfriend, and she had planned to drive us back to her place, where my vehicle was. I had been drinking enough that I was not going to drive. I told her about filing the police report, and she immediately got visibly upset and left the brewery without me shortly after. I ended up having to take a cab home and one back to my vehicle at her place this morning. My girlfriend is now telling me we need to have a talk tonight, and is otherwise giving me the cold shoulder. I can only assume she is upset that I filed the police report, and the neighbor or landlord might get upset. My question is, how can I talk to her to help her understand what I did was to protect myself and my livelihood? Also, if anyone can help me understand why she is so upset about this, I would really appreciate it. TLDR, passed out neighbor almost burns down house with breakfast. I file a police report to cover my arse for going into the neighbor's apartment. My girlfriend is pissed at me and says, "We need to talk." Comments. Comment 1. I can't even begin to imagine what she thinks you did wrong. OP. That is where I am stuck too. The only thing I can think of is if she didn't want to cause a scene or get anyone in trouble and thinks by me filing a police report, I am not taking her feelings into account. Comment 2. What are relations like between you guys and her neighbor, or her and her neighbor generally? Neighborly? Friendly? Awkward? OP. The neighbor I don't know, and from what she has told me, she barely knows. He isn't around much, but when he is, you know it. Slams doors, plays loud music, and is generally that annoying neighbor you shy away from. Comment 3. At least tell us this sort of behavior is uncommon and unusual for her. OP. That is a good question. Normally she is steady as a rock. Lately, though, she has been less so. 2 weekends ago, she stormed out in the middle of our weekly friends game cooking night. She came back later and apologized, but still. Update. Wow, so we just broke up. We talked for about 15 minutes on the phone, and she accused me of not taking her feelings into account. Since someone asked, we started dating on and off last summer, and finally became a couple at Thanksgiving. Here is the bombshell I mentioned might be coming in the comments. We are scheduled to leave on an already paid-for vacation to the Caribbean for a week together in just over 2 weeks. We talked briefly about it on the phone, and decided it would be best if we gave each other some time and didn't talk about it just yet. This is where I would love some help and feedback. The relationship may not be repairable at this point, but I still think she is an amazing girl, and I want to see how much damage control I can do to prevent this from being worse for either of us than it needs to be. Comments. Comment 1. She didn't want to be with you anymore, and this was the excuse. OP. Considering the conversation I just had with her, I am inclined to agree with you. OP on the conversation. The conversation went like this. Her. You don't respect my feelings, and I'm done. At which point I talked to her for the remaining 14.5 minutes about why she would get that impression and tried to explain that my actions were not meant to be selfish. There was a little bit of back and forth during that time, but her argument felt to me like it had too many holes in it to be everything, and like many other people said, I think she was just looking for a way out. Morning after update. After some social lubricant and talking to a lot of random people on here and at the brewery last night, I have come to a conclusion. Even if there was more going on, like many people have surmised, the relationship is over. There is no point in me holding on to it and letting it get me down. Today is a new day. I am going to make it a good one and not look back. I know there are going to be issues with the vacation, but I will handle those as they come. I will make sure to update you all and ask for advice when I need some. Today I need some clarity and to be away from the subject, so don't expect a lot of updates today, but I will try to stop in from time to time. I also have to say thank you all for everything you have said. There are so many of you that helped me find a peace of mind that I otherwise would have had much more trouble with. A special thanks to the people at the brewery last night who, without knowing it, really helped me through this. A bit later update. So I'm sitting here with a close friend, and he tells me since Thanksgiving he could tell things weren't the same. This is the same person who told me she makes me a better person and was a big part of why I dated her. I really do feel like I was blind to what was really going on and did not truly believe this was either an excuse or the start of a broke the camel's back kind of situation. Update. Since we broke up, we haven't talked much, but agreed to talk about how we are going to handle the Caribbean vacation tomorrow. That won't be happening, it looks like. Tonight I get an email that she canceled my flight. I started doing some digging, and was able to find out that she is now going on the vacation with her ex-fiancé. You guys called it. There was more going on. I am cutting all contact with her, so I can have a clean break and move on to the next part of my life. By the way, does anyone know of a fun place to travel with my flight voucher from the cancelled ticket? Lol, I'm in the US. TLDR. Saved girlfriend's apartment from burning down. She breaks up with me over something petty, and is now going on what was supposed to be our Caribbean vacation with her ex-fiancé. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.